So, what if I told you that being good at drawing or painting or even photography has almost nothing to do with talent? Seriously, the real secret isn't some gift you're born with. It's about learning how to see. And today, we're going to unpack exactly what that means.
I hear this all the time. Oh, I can't even draw a stick figure. I bet you've probably even said it yourself. But here's the thing, that belief is built on a total myth. Art isn't some magical ability only a few people have. It is absolutely a skill, one that you can learn, just like learning to read or ride a bike.
The biggest hurdle isn't your hands. It's actually your brain. And it's not your fault. As the incredible art educator Dr. Betty Edwards figured out, our brains are wired for efficiency. They love taking shortcuts. They see something, label it, and move on. That's fantastic for, not getting eaten by a tiger, but it is terrible for making art. Think about it like this. When you look at a chair, your brain doesn't see the complex angles, the subtle shadows, the way the light hits the wood. Nope, it just says, chair, and gives you a little symbol, a mental cartoon of a chair you've had since you were a kid. You're not seeing the actual thing in front of you, you're just seeing the idea of it. The first step to being an artist is learning how to switch off that naming and labeling part of your brain. Now, this idea of getting past our brain's automatic symbols isn't brand new. Way before we had the brain science to back it up, there was a teacher who was already pushing his students to observe the world in a completely different and much deeper way. His name was Kimon Nicolaides. And back in the early 20th century, he taught that just looking at something wasn't enough. He had this really radical idea that to truly see, you had to engage your other senses, especially touch. He believed that if you could imagine what something feels like, its texture, its weight, its temperature, you form a connection that's way more real than just what your eyes tell you. And for him, drawing wasn't some fancy artistic performance. In his book, The Natural Way to Draw, he said it's just a biological process. It's the physical evidence of you paying really, really close attention. Basically, a trail left on the paper by your intense observation. So Nicolaides really laid down the philosophical groundwork. But then Dr. Betty Edwards came along, and she turned that philosophy into a system, a practical method that literally anyone could use. Her book, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, was a complete game changer. She called drawing a global skill. What does that mean? Well, it just means it's made up of smaller component skills. If you learn the components one by one, your brain eventually puts them all together automatically. She basically wrote the instruction manual for how to see. And this is the core of her entire method. She figured out that there are just five basic perceptual skills. And notice the word here is perceptual. These aren't drawing skills, they are seeing skills. If you can master how to see these 5 ways, the drawing part, well, it almost takes care of itself. Okay, so let's quickly run through them. First is edges, literally just seeing the line where one object stops and another begins. Second, spaces. This is a big one. It's about looking at the empty shapes around your subject. Artists call it negative space. Third is relationships, which is just a fancy way of talking about perspective and proportion, making sure the head isn't bigger than the body. Fourth is lights and shadows, seeing the different values that make an object look 3D. And finally, number 5 is gestalt. That's that magic moment when all these separate lines and shapes you've been observing suddenly click together in your brain and poof, it's a face, it's a tree, it's the whole picture. Those 5 skills built the entire foundation. They were the essential alphabet of visual art. But to write poetry, you need more than just the alphabet, right? That's what brings us to the modern era. And I really want to be crystal clear about this. Dr. Edwards' work was and still is astounding. She was absolutely correct. She gave millions of people the key to unlock a part of themselves they thought was locked forever. Her work is the bedrock that everything else is built on. But as time went on, artists, painters, photographers, digital creators started to realize that for the full spectrum of what they wanted to do, those 5 essentials sometimes felt, well, just a little incomplete. To really master color, or to create something brand new from your imagination, a few more tools were needed in the toolbox. And that brings us to this modern evolution, the 8 perceptions for 2026. Now, this framework keeps Dr. Edwards' core 4 right at the start. The perception of edges, the perception of spaces, the perception of relationships, and the perception of lights and shadows. But then we expand. Number 5 is the perception of color. Number 6 is the perception of memory, the other senses and imagination. Number 7 is the perception of illusions. And finally, number 8 brings it all home with the perception of the whole, or gestalt. So, why add these? Well, because modern art demands it. How can you be a painter without a deep understanding of how we perceive color? How can you be an illustrator dreaming up new worlds if you can't tap into memory and imagination? And what is photography or filmmaking if not mastering the beautiful power of illusion? This updated list just addresses the whole creative process from start to finish. And really, that's the whole point. It doesn't matter if you're using 5 perceptions or 8. The goal is exactly what Frederick Frank talks about here. It's about slowing down enough to realize that the most ordinary things in our lives are actually extraordinary. Drawing is just a tool to help us finally see that. At the end of the day, this is about so much more than just making a pretty picture. When you learn these skills, you are fundamentally rewiring your brain. You're teaching yourself to look past the easy answer, to see hidden connections, and to solve problems in a whole new way. It is a genuine superpower that you can apply to everything in your life. So the real question is, once you've unlocked your artist's eye, what else will you see?